Every story has got to start somewhere. Except this video has no story because I've just painted another model. This video was sponsored by Tanuki Figures and I'm painting Blade today. Oh yes, this is Groundeffected. My name is your dad. The model in this video is from Tanuki Figures. This is a Patreon over on Patreon who create a bunch of models every single month. And genuinely, looking at their lineup, there is literally so many incredibly awesome and epic models for you to choose from. I'm not even gonna lie, even their welcome pack is pretty freaking ridiculous. Look at that. If you are interested in Tanuki Figures and you are thinking of painting or printing this Blade figure for yourself, well then go click on a computer and do the thing, join the subscription and check in the description down below. There's a link for you to do all of that. Let's just get some paint on this model. Of course, a massive thank you to Tanuki for sponsoring this video, but we've got some work to do. Printing this model was pretty uneventful, if I have to say that. I did stick this entire base together, by the way. That fell off, don't worry about that. I printed the entire base as one, and the way that I did this was literally by sticking it all together in the computer and in the slicer, and once that was done, all good, and Bob is in fact going to be your uncle. Now what I do need to do is stick together this jacquet, because it couldn't fit on my printer. So I need to stick that together and then somehow hide that holes or the gap that's going to be left there. I also need to paint these in some transparent clear. This is the blood that's coming out the bottom of this model, and so that probably is going to get done sooner rather than later, so that these can sit aside and dry, because once those are done, they're done and I don't have to do anything else to them. So that's a nice quick easy win to getting this model started. I think then my next steps would be putting some primer on everything and getting the paint on this model. Oh, one little thing that was very highly annoying is that support on that little section there pulled out a piece of his pant. So I need to fix that too. And I'm just going to use some super glue, which in this case is going to be this thick super glue, and some activator to just fill the gap that's left over and hope that nobody notices it. The first thing I'm going to paint on this model is going to be the blood that is bursting out of the base, and I'm going to start out by painting a red ink over the top of this. Now, this was the incorrect color. I'm going to be totally straight up with you. I should have just gone straight with this Flesh Terror's red. I really wish I did, but I didn't, and annoyingly that meant I couldn't put enough of the deep, dark red into the shadows, because there wasn't enough clear left over after I'd covered it with the freaking red ink. So if you want to know how to do these blood splats, don't put the red ink first, just use the Flesh Terror's red. And then I sprayed a glass clear over the top. And I want to quickly show you something here. I found these little silicone bottles with a very sharp neck on them, and I'm able to put some resin inside of them, which means I can then use that to fill the gaps on certain things. Now, I'll be totally honest with you, the best way of filling this gap was not this way at all. In fact, it would have been better to just put some green stuff in there and taking a texture mold of the body, but the reality is time was not on my side. As per freaking usual, I just did not have enough time on my side. Now this is going to be a model of black, and everything is going to be black, but that's not going to stop me from using black as my primer layer. And I do just want to mention though that black is not black. In fact, if you have been using black and you try and get a different black and your primer is black, they don't match. None of them match, but we'll get onto that subject in a little bit. For the sword and also the sharp S-shaped thing in his hand, I'm going to be using some chrome, and this will be nice and shiny on the model. Now, as you can see, I'm going over some of this model with this color called gloss black. And gloss black is not the same color as matte black. I'll just be straight up with you on this one. It just isn't. And this is just knowledge that I have of my own, that I just know. And I don't know how I know that. It's probably because I've tried to paint something with it before and realized that it's not the same color. Now, of course, the suit needed a little bit of a black gray over the top for some highlight, just a tiny little bit, and then a gloss clear over the top of all of that perfectly. I'm going to use the same gloss black to paint the pant, and I'm also going to paint the shoes with this. Now the shoes I will be keeping in that gloss black, but I'm going to take some matte varnish and paint that over the pant area in order to kind of play around with a little bit of textures here, because we are just doing a black model. So I'm going to be relying on using multiple different glosses and shines and things like that to just make the blacks look different. Now getting on to painting the base, I'm going to start out with a dark brown at first, and this is going to feel like nothing is happening, but when you speed it up you can see that stuff is actually happening, but it really starts taking shape after the lighter brown, which is the medium kind of brown. And then obviously I'm using this buff, which is not brown in any shape or form, but is a very bright color. That is okay though, because I'm going to change or tint this color using a multitude of contrast paints and also some wash or shade paints, and I'm going to spray them over certain areas. I'm not kind of painting the whole thing solidly, but I'm painting in certain directions, mostly from the shadows and stuff like that. You can see the highlights in places, and then I dry brushed over the top of that to bring the edges out. Now I'm going to take a little bit of white oil paint, and I'm going to put some spirits with this, because I really thought this was the right kind of model for this technique. However, there is way too many cracks and crevasses, and so this technique is not perfect, and I did in fact let this dry and then painted white into those crevasses using an ink later on. And again, the ink was a stupid idea either, so I just stuck with it after that. But as soon as I had got this white in the place that I needed it to be into, I was then going to approach these signs with some color that would make it look like they were glowing in some sort of a way. And on the one that's facing forward, I just used like an aqua kind of color. It doesn't really matter what color this is. I'll be totally honest, I fought myself about these colors throughout this entire model. It just felt like every time I picked a color, it was the wrong freaking color. And I guess there are just models that are like that, and this one literally threw me for a bit of a loop. And so you are literally just watching me struggle with painting this model, and I know it may not look like it to you, but genuinely a lot of pinching of the diamonds was happening, and you would have to be a long-time viewer of the channel to know exactly what that means. But when I painted that white over everything, it destroyed everything. It literally seeped into all the crevasses, and so I had to dry brush back over the top again. And then I made another wrong color choice, and I picked this ultramarine blue thinking it would be bright. It was not bright enough. It did not appear like a glow. It just wasn't even the right color at all. So I figured I'd take some Talisar blue and spray that over the top of that ultramarine blue to try and salvage what I have done, because it was not looking right at all at this point, and I was getting overspray everywhere. But no fear, because I can just take the same consecutive browns and paint them back over the top, and yes, the middle will look a little bit brighter than the rest was, but it is what it is at this point, and we're just going to deal with it. I put a gloss clear coat over the inside of that inner shape thing, and this is to make it look a little bit more shiny, because I guess lights would be shiny. I don't know why I did that, but I did that anyway. I used dark silver to paint all of the buckles that hold the laces on the boots. I then took some matte varnish and tried to paint the laces with this matte varnish, and it looked like terrible, so I just used the matte to paint over the sole so that there was a difference in the texture of the sole and the main shoe itself. I then used black grey to actually paint the laces on these shoes, and this was a much better choice to use for this. Now it does obviously look a little bit different, and it might be a bit weird if you think about it. You wouldn't put grey laces in, but it is a good way for me to make sure that the laces aren't just one color with the shoe, because I'm not going to be adding any secondary light sources onto this model in order to make the greys or the blacks stand out. The strap around his leg needed to be painted black as well. Now there is just black on black on black in this model, so it's quite a difficult thing. I'm not going to even lie to you about this, but the trick and the secret is going to be in those gloss and matte clear coats. Trust me, I'll show you what I mean in a minute, but quickly, I need to paint the silver sharp stakes on his thigh with obviously silver, and then I'm going to use a gloss over the top of that strap that goes around his thigh, and this is going to make this stand out a little bit differently from the pant area. Now I want you to notice something. I could have painted those pants with a matte black, and that might have worked well, but I wanted to make sure there was a difference, and by putting matte over the top of the gloss black, it makes a totally different black. And you'll see a little bit later when we get around to painting the hands, and actually in the final renders of the video at the end when I show you the model, then you will know that the black is different, and I can't explain the science to this. I don't know what it is. I just know that the black is different, and this is the reason why I chose to use gloss black in one area and then a matte black in a different area completely. On the inside of the cape, the cape is meant to be a red color, and I painted deck tan first, because if I try to paint red over the top of black, I was going to have a very sad time. And so putting the deck tan down first, in about 2 layers, it makes a nice smooth coat for me to now put a color like red, which just does not like to go over anything dark. It wants light colors underneath it, and the lighter the color, the more brighter your red is going to be. Because I want this red to be quite bright for the next steps that I'm going to be using, which is going to be dulling it down a little bit, but giving a little bit of depth. And I'm going to use some Caribou Crimson and spray that into all of the crevasses and up in the creases of things, and this will help to just create some more depth. This is the area that I'm going to use this normal matte black in, and this is going to be on the gloved hands. And I know this is going to seem crazy, but the color is different. It's not the same color, and I'm going to be putting a clear coat over the top of this as well. But I want you to notice, when you look at the final product of this model, how much of a difference there is between this black, the matte black, and the gloss black with a matte clear coat over the top of it, as well as a matte black with a gloss clear coat over the top of that. They are different colors, and they're different colors with or without the gloss. There's like 8 different blacks, if you think about it. So the truth is, this model was just going to be a load of different parts of different blacks with different clear coats over the top of them, and I'm not going to put any extra highlights on the top of it, and I'm going to rely on the fact that I'm using different clear coats to make it look like each texture is their own texture. Now for the skin tones, I'm going to use the same technique as I do for all skin tones. I'll start out with pinkle and a bit of red in the shadows, because I want that warmth in the skin when I get to the final product of the skin. I'll then use what I think is probably the wrong color, I'll be totally honest, and because of that I did change over to dark rose and try to spray that over the top of that dark brown that I had laid down at first. And this was also kind of the wrong color, I'm not gonna lie. It was not right, but we're gonna stick with it, and we're gonna take a cool brown and spray that over the top of everything to bring in a little bit more yellow into that skin, so that it wasn't quite so pasty, because this so far does not look like the color of skin of Blade. So to fix that, I will add in a shade with Gilliman Flesh, and I'm gonna liberally paint this over everything. But as I was painting it, I noticed it was a little bit too yellowy, so I used a bit of Reikland Flesh shade to kind of darken this up a little bit and add a bit more red into the skins. And while this was drying, I then took the time to take some semi-gloss, which is basically satin in gallery speech, and I painted that over the top of the hands, or the gloves, and this is to give them a slight leathery look, because of course the gloves wouldn't be matte, they probably would be a little bit shinier than like his pants, for example. So this semi-gloss is how I'm going to be achieving that look. I'm then going to go back to the skin tones using some Agrax Earthshade and spray that into the shadows as if this was Orcish Dermis on a different type of skin tone. So in the shadows and in the bendy parts, although there aren't much bendy parts here, but I'm going to spray it in the shadows and on the face, a little bit on the temples and underneath the chin, and this is going to help give me the depth to the skin that I need in order to give it a little bit more of the look of a Wesley Snipes from the Blade movie. Now I can start working on his hair, and the way I'll do that is by dabbing my brush over the top of the hairline. Basically, I don't want a dead solid line across the edge of this hairline. It's going to look pretty solid and straight, but I do want it to make it have some very slight brush like dots next to it, so that it does look a little bit more like actual hair. And once I've done the outer perimeter, I can then just haphazardly color in solidly over the top of the hair. I do not think that this needs any difference, and I want you to look again at the end when I show the final product how different all these different blacks look against each other. For his lovely moustache, obviously he is doing the whole Movember thing, and I just used a very, very small brush with the same black, and I just done about 480,000 little tiny dots and lines to just make it look like hairs across his upper lip. I'm then going to take that same black again and paint over the glasses. But now, of course, this cannot look, the black from the glasses and the black from the hair can't be the same. We also have tattoos to deal with, and I can't use the same color for everything. I'll show you what I do with the glasses later, but let's talk about the tattoos quick. I took some leather brown, which is the color I used to start with the skin, and I then put that into some black, and I mixed this to quite a thin consistency so that I can then paint it in a freehand like fashion over the nice raised tattoo that is on the back of his neck and head, which luckily was sculpted in there for us to follow. Otherwise you would have had to freehand this in, and I'm telling you now, I wasn't going to do it. Like, I swear I was not going to freehand this on the back of this dude's neck, but I was going to follow these raised lines because I had no choice since they were there, and I would look like a schmuck if I didn't. Now, to deal with the fact that all the blacks are different, I'm going to quickly paint some gloss from Vallejo over the top of the glasses themselves. However, this does not look like glass enough, so to do that, I'm going to use some clear X22 and paint that over the glass area of the glasses themselves to make this section of the model look even more shinier than the rest. And now I can put the model's head on top of it and call this one done. Well, this was a masterclass in black, wasn't it? It was basically just one solid black model, and I'm saying that in more ways than one, obviously, but it's not funny, because obviously trying to paint all these different blacks is not easy if you have no idea how to approach it. But I hope that this video gave you some insight, and perhaps you are dealing with a model of a similar persuasion, in which case I've then hopefully given you some ideas for how you can paint your model and get all those different black areas to stand out and look different from each other, but still be readable as black, because of course that is what you're trying to achieve if you are painting Blade, for example. I want to say a massive thank you if you've made it this far, and I want to say an even bigger thank you to those who are over on my Patreon. There is color palettes, there is behind the scenes videos, pictures, and a bunch of things. We also have our own models where we create some original characters if you're interested in that. And that's it, the end of the video. Of course, there is a very, very fun thing I get to say at the end of my videos, and it is a little line that sounds like this. If you don't like anything you saw in this video, just f*** off, man.